Today I'm going to show you how to find variables on the British Election Study Data Playground. So the first place we want to go is the British Election Study. British Election Study. The British Election Study is a fantastic long-running survey of British attitudes, especially around elections. They have a great data-based playground area that allows you to engage in online analysis. If you go to the data tab, you go over to data playground, and you scroll down and take a look at create your own graph. Click on this, the first thing you want to do. Secondly, you want to choose your type of graph. You can do pie charts, which are going to be best for looking at a single variable at a time. Bar charts are going to be the best for comparing two or more variables together. Line charts for capturing trends over time, and timelines that combine the two. Most of the time, most people are going to be interested in bar charts. That's by far the most flexible of graphs for you to use. Once you click on bar chart or any other type that you want, click next step. And here we have all of the different waves of the British election study. So these are done in waves. They ask different questions and have different kinds of data available based on what wave you have chosen. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the wave that best reflects your interest. If you're not really certain, always go with more recent over older data. It's going to be more dynamic. People are going to respond to that a little bit more. So let's say that what I was interested in looking at was vote intention. I wanted to know how people were planning on voting in the 2024 British election. So I might want to go to the pre-election wave, which was done between May 24th and June 24th. I click the box to choose a wave. And then I hit next step. Here's where things get a little tricky and it's worth explaining. In order to find the variables you're looking for, the first thing you need to do is select your variable group, which is done over here. The first variable you put in is always going to be your dependent variable, the outcome you're trying to explain. So just keep that in mind. You want to put that explanation variable first. Here we have different characteristics or categories that the data can fall in. Here we have voting and party support, party leader and government evaluations, political attitudes, issues and values, demographic, or campaign information. I think what I'm going to be interested in is voting and party support. So let's go ahead and click on that. Once I've clicked on that section, I'm going to go over here to select variable, and this is going to be the specific variables that are available in the British election study. Here we have previous vote turnout, we have members of any political party, certainty of vote detection, decided on the general election, eligible, looks like maybe decided might be our best bet. So let's go ahead and click on that. Nominal tells us the type of variable we're interested in. We hit next step. We choose which one of the member countries we're interested in looking at. This includes England, Scotland, and Wales. Let's say we're interested in all three and keep moving forward. Now the British election study takes a few minutes to construct your variable. This can take a few minutes, so take your time, relax. And while you're doing that, let's talk about what kind of variables you want to choose. When you're trying to explain outcomes, you want to try to find the variable that best reflects what you're interested in, the thing that's as close as possible. Sometimes that's not possible, however. There's no exact perfect measure. So it's really important to think about what are other ways that I have of measuring something I'm interested in. Let's say, for example, you were interested in climate change and there's only questions about general environmental attitudes. That at very least might be a really good first cut into using the British election study. There's always going to be limitations with survey data. You are always stuck with the questions they decided to ask rather than the perfect question that you write in your mind, but that's okay. We can always learn a lot by looking at the data that exists, even if it's not the data we're most interested in. Now that the results are up, we can decide, let's see what we see. And here we said, okay, well, this was not exactly the variable we were looking for, but it did tell us whether a person all the way in May and June was decided or not. That's actually pretty interesting. We can see that 54% were already decided well before the election, but up to a third were not decided. And interestingly, about 10% of people indicated they just weren't planning on voting at all. So this was actually an election that campaigns really could matter on. With that many undecided voters, you could really see major shifts in votes. If you want more specific information about these variables, you can always click on this View Data Table arrow down here. Just click on this, and it will actually give you the absolute total numbers of people in each category along with the percentages. And this is particularly useful when you're looking at two variables at once. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and edit our chart and add in a second variable. So we're going back here to select our variables, and we want to see, hey, what actually is determining whether people are decided or not. So we are going to go to do the same process again. Click on variable category, and then click on a variable of interest. Maybe we want, now that we have decided, maybe we're interested to see who these folks are actually going to support. So let's try vote intention. So here I'm going to show you a different mechanism. Rather than just scrolling through, you can type in keywords or phrases related to concepts you're interested in. Use some creativity here to make sure that you're really getting close to this particular question of interest. General election vote intention is going to be our best bet here. Squeeze versus unsqueeze gives you different amounts of information, but let's just start with this first one. We click on that, and we remake our graph. Once again, we have that wait period. It takes a few minutes, but it's not too bad. Once we get that done, we can see the results. You always want to think through, when you're coming up with these explanations, what makes the most sense for the outcome I'm trying to explain versus the outcome they think is driving it. With survey data, we can't really prove these things. We can just have theoretical associations, but it's important to make those decisions ahead of time and really have good theoretical reasons for making those associations. I kept it really simple here with just two measures of sort of essentially vote choice, but there's a lot of really interesting questions in the British election study, and it's really worth kind of scrolling through and playing around and seeing what kinds of questions, what kind of survey questions best reflect the interests of your research project. So you'll find a lot of different interesting outcomes here. You just have to find them. One of the reasons I really like the British Election Studies Data Playground is just how beautiful the graphs it pops out are. These are, I think, publication ready, great for online websites, blog posts, arguments with your friends, but that really look nice and convey information really clearly. It's one of the reasons I think that the Playground is such a useful tool, is it really thought about creating really nice, clear, and effective images. So certainly something excuse me, to consider as you are choosing the online data analysis platform you want. If you're looking, by the way, for a tutorial on how to use the British election study more generally, this is not the one. It is a great and well-organized website. There are plenty of fantastic data-based tutorials on that already. Man, this just has to be ready soon. This is probably the one major downside. It is a little bit of a prolonged process compared to certain other kinds of systems. Oh, here it is. And here what we have is something that's a little complicated, right? We have a lot of information at once. Well, the nice thing here is it's actually quite easy to filter the chart and focus on what you're interested in. So if you click on Filter Chart up here, let's say that we're not quite interested on skipped. We'll get rid of that. Not asked. We probably don't want that. Might be interested in don't know, but let's focus on no, not decided yet, yes, decided, will not vote. So these are our three categories. We can take a look at what this looks like, or we can also reduce our independent variable and just kind of focus on some key parties. Let's go ahead and take a look at our updated chart here. Does have to restart and reload. Hopefully it'll be a little bit faster this time. While this is loading, I'll say that Another place to go and look to find out what kind of data is available is in the data download section. You can go to your specific data. You can go here, go to cross-sectional data, click on these specific studies, and you can download the questionnaire. And sometimes it's a little bit easier to use this than to use the online analysis. So it really just depends on what is the most useful for you. Just download your questionnaire. PDF will pop up, and you can go through and look through the code book and find different kinds of variables that you are interested in, listed out this way. Do you think that the cost of living has gotten better, or stayed the same since the last general election in 2017? Tells you the phrasing of the question, and then tells you the possible answers. So that's also a nice and useful way of going through the data. But sometimes it can take a few minutes to really go through this large data set. And if you're really just focused on what you can do with the playground, that's where you want to stick. Filling time on these is not my area of expertise. My area of expertise is data. But the website is also fantastic in that it has some other interesting things to take a look at. The news section is really great. It gives you some fun new analyses being done by the British election study, effective voter ID requirements on British elections, announcements about the release of the expert survey, reflections from the BES team, which is fantastic. They are a great group of folks putting together a lot of great work, especially with snap elections, a very impressive thing. So you may just want to take a look at some of the news. There's a nice tutorial about what's in the study and how it works. The About section gives you some larger questions and studies. The Impact team shows you why folks should care about the BES, why it matters. And it does matter a lot. It is the primary way in which we study British election attitudes as political scientists. Ah, here it is. Great. So now it tells you all these filters and charts, but this is a little bit more of an easy chart for us to use. What we can see is all these small parties really just were not mattering much in the election. In fact, for time, I'm not going to do it, but I would probably go back in and just get rid of everything other than yes, I will vote, no, I will not, and I'm undecided. What we can see here is Labor voters, to our non-surprise, were much more likely to have already decided to vote compared to conservative voters at about a 7% increase. Liberal Democrats were much less decisive, whereas SNP as lower as well, as were Plaid Cymru, although both had high error bars and some little bit of attention. And this is, by the way, where this data table can be really useful, really helps us to see these patterns more clearly. For Labor, we can see 80% of people who intended to vote for Labor had already decided whom they were going to vote for all the way back in early May. So that's how the BES works. It's a very straightforward process. You go to data, you go to Data Playground, you choose your chart, and you go through the process. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a tutorial, a little bit of sense of how all of this works.